Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your co-host, Shaq. We're going to be talking UFC Vegas 19, Curtis Blaydes versus Derrick Lewis. And Shaq, it's going down tomorrow night, Saturday in Vegas. Two heavyweights in the main event. You got the man with the most takedowns in UFC heavyweight history, and Curtis Blaydes taking on the man with the most knockouts in UFC heavyweight history in Derrick Lewis. We know exactly what both guys want to do. Hell of a main event between two top five guys this Saturday night, Shaq.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Curtis Blaydes, I've been on the record to say that outside of Ngannou and Stipe, he's got to be the best heavyweight out there. He wins all of his fights other than Francis Ngannou and for the most part in fashion. And and Derrick Lewis, on the other hand, is responsible for some of the greatest comebacks in the heavyweight division's history. I know you remember that knockout against Alexander Volkov in which he was losing the entire fight, or the Tybura fight, or the Shamil fight. He always comes back and pulls off these spectacular KOs, so I'm excited.
I mean, at this point, I think people need to put some respect on Derrick Lewis' name. I mean, this is a guy who's got 15 wins inside the octagon, and like I mentioned, 11 knockouts, which is the record. I mean, that's more than Ngannou, it's more than JDS, more than Kane, more than Arlovski, more than Stipe. So this guy is truly a record breaker, and this Saturday night is going to look to add to that total. But you know for a fact, a guy like Curtis Blaydes, who averages nearly 7 takedowns per fight, you know exactly what he's going to try to do. He doesn't give a shit if it's exciting or not. All he cares about is winning. And if you're betting on a guy like Curtis Blaydes, or if you're putting him in your DraftKings lineups, at least you know that, hey, he's not going to take any unnecessary risks. He's going to go out there and fight to his strengths, Shaq.
100%. And we can't forget Derrick Lewis has a win over Francis Ngannou. So I know it was one of the worst fights in UFC history, but he does have a win over him. But yeah, like you said, Blaydes, we know what he's looking to do. No secret. I respect it. Take the easy path, and that's what he does in most of his fights, and that's why he is where he is.
Yes, sir. Well, Shaq, before we break down this whole card start to finish, just got to talk about our sponsor, Manscaped, the official electric trimmer of Half the Battle and the UFC. Manscaped, not only are they the presenting sponsor of this podcast, Half the Battle, but they also sponsor multiple UFC stars, including Max Holloway, Francis Ngannou, like we just mentioned, and Sugar Sean O'Malley, who's got a fight coming up. Manscaped is here to ensure your favorite fighter doesn't miss weight because of their pubes. And Shaq, I mean, what a shitty way to miss weight would that be, just because you're not well kept? And not only that, how shitty of a way would it be to lose a short notice opportunity because you're not ready to go like Kevin Holland? Manscaped is changing the grooming game with their Perfect Package 3.0, and this Perfect Package 3.0 includes the Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer, which the ceramic blade and skin safe technology are designed to reduce nicks to your tugs and your fellows down below. And for all our international listeners out there, their life-changing products are now available across UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the EU. It's time to hop on the Manscaped movement. Inside the Perfect Package 3.0, you'll also get the Crop Preserver deodorant for below the belt. It's anti-chafing and moisturizing. You'll also find the Crop Reviver toner, which is an aloe vera infused cologne for below the belt. And for a limited time, subscribers get not one but 2 free gifts: the Shed travel bag, a $39 value, and the patented high performance anti-chafing Manscaped boxer briefs. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code BATTLE20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code BATTLE20 at manscaped.com. Your balls are going to thank you, Shaq.
100%. And the guys you just mentioned, Max Holloway, Kevin Holland, just look, Manscaped is behind these type of guys. Just look what Max Holloway did his last fight, setting a significant strike record. Kevin Holland's out here knocking guys out from bottom. So, I mean, enough said.
Next up, I got to hook up my boy Bilal Muhammad with this Manscaped sponsorship. You see the kind of numbers he put up against Diego Lima. Now he's got this big opportunity against Leon. Could you imagine if he goes from number 15 to number 3 in the world, all in the span of a month?
Yeah, that would be quite the, jump up in competition. But a lot of guys have been doing it lately. Marvin Vettori was unranked, and then now he's in the top 5. Kevin Holland was unranked. Now he's in the top 10. I mean, guys are making big rises fairly quick these days in the UFC. Leon Edwards, they say he deserves a title shot. I want to see. This can't, if Bilal Muhammad, if he wants a title shot, he better come out here and make a statement. This can't be a squeak out decision. So I'm excited for that fight.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Interesting little tidbit. Look, and I got all the respect in the world for Leon Edwards. Did you know that Nate Diaz has fought twice since the last time that Leon Edwards has fought? I was very surprised to hear that fact, Shaq.
Yeah, I mean, that is the case. He's been injured. He had COVID. The Woodley fight fell through, so that he does have some excuses. But we'll see. We'll see how he looks in this Bilal fight.
My boy Daniel Edwards says Manscaped might be put on the USADA list. I mean, you're right. It is performance enhancing. I mean, there's no questions asked. So make sure y'all go to manscaped.com, use that promo code BATTLE20 for 20% off and free shipping. Now, Shaq, let's get right down to business, because first up in the heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Sergey, the polar bear Spivak. He's from Moldova. He's 11-2, and he's taking on the American Jared Vanderaa, who is 11-4. Currently, they got Sergey Spivak -250. The comeback on Jared Vanderaa is +194. Shaq, I got to give Sergey Spivak so much credit, because, I mean, this is a guy who, you saw the kind of competition he was fighting on the regional scene. And, I mean, firstly, look at how he handled that competition, whether it's the schoolyard headlock, whether it's the head kick. I mean, if you are not on Sergey Spivak's level, he's going to go out there and show you that you're not on his level. And he gets the call to fight in the UFC, and they put him in there with a killer's row, man. I mean, Walt Harris in your first fight. Look, yeah, Walt Harris lost to Volkov, who's a top 3 guy, but Walt Harris is a top 15 guy. Then he fights Tai Tuivasa in Australia, Shaq, submits him. Then he fights Marcin Tybura, another top 15 guy. And then he fights, the lowest ranked guy he's fought, who's still got a winning record in the UFC, Carlos Felipe, who will be ranked probably in the next year or so. So, man, this kid at only 26 years of age has been fighting a killer's row at heavyweight. And now, for the first time in his career, no disrespect to Jared Vanderaa, I respect anyone that makes that walk, but this is the first softball of Sergey Spivak's UFC run. And we know exactly how he handles these kind of guys. And listen, again, I respect Vanderaa, his performance on Contender Series. He ate a lot of shots and he came back and won. He's a tough guy, but this is that spot where Sergey Spivak is going to have the best performance of his UFC career, whether it's a head kick knockout, whether it's a schoolyard headlock, whether it's him grinding him out for 3 straight rounds. I got the Moldovan Sergey Spivak to win this fight, Shaq.
Those Moldovan heavyweights are doing their thing right now. You got Sergey Spivak, you got Alexander Romanov. I can't wait for his next fight. So the Moldovan heavyweight market's looking good. But yeah, I think Spivak's the more skilled guy here. I think Vanderaa a big boy and he's tough. But he in his fight in LFA against the Brazilian, I've seen him get dropped. Tough guy, but just seems to take a lot of shots, very stiff, very slow. Spivak's got to be careful of the power. It's the heavyweight division. We all know one shot can change everything, but I think Spivak's got a nice jab, and I really like that last performance against Carlos Boy Felipe in Abu Dhabi. Carlos Boy Felipe, like your winning record, might be ranked soon here coming up. And Spivak, I mean, he faced adversity in that fight. He's faced adversity in pretty much all his fights. Marcin Tybura is doing his thing right now. I mean, Marcin Tybura is on a 3-4 fight win streak. 4-fight win streak. Just beat Greg Hardy, beat Ben Rothwell. So there's no shame in losing to that at that age at which he lost. And I also hear Spivak is playing Stipe for a certain heavyweight. He's playing Stipe for Ngannou in Las Vegas with Nixick and all them dudes. So I think he's at a good camp. I mean, Extreme Couture is looking real nice these days. There's a lot of dudes in there. So I'm going with Sergey Spivak here. I'm sure Vanderaa will be back, but I just think he's the more skilled guy, the nicer jab. I think he could pop Vanderea's head back, get the takedowns, and he's a better grappler. To beat Tuivasa, who's is he top 15 or at least right outside the top 15? To handle them like that under that type of circumstances in Australia was very impressive. So I see Sergey Spivak being a part of the heavyweight division for a very long time.
You mentioned these guys from Extreme Couture making big improvements. Even their weakest link, Maki Pitolo, looked the best he ever looked his last fight against Julian Marquez. I know he got caught at the very end, but I had never seen Maki Pitolo look like that ever before. So whatever Eric Nixick is doing, Coach Nixick, keep doing it. Now, Shaq, next up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between the returning Aiemann Zahabi. He's 7-2, and he's welcoming Drako Rodriguez, who's 7-1 to the UFC. Is it Drako or is it Draco?
Draco.
Currently, they got Drako Rodriguez minus 185. The comeback on Aiemann Zahabi is plus 146. Listen, I'm just going to start off by saying this. All respect to the Zahabi brothers. I mean, I think Faraz is one of the best coaches of all time. And I actually think that, his brother Aiemann, he's probably a great coach in the gym. He's probably a great training partner. He's really a smart kid. He's probably a nice guy. I like him. But when it comes to fighting inside the octagon, I think both those guys will tell you that this is a brutal sport where you have to be fully committed and you got to be all in. And I felt like Aiemann was all in back in 2017 when he fought Ricardo Ramos. And just to put that in perspective of how long ago that was, Shaq, that was the same night that James Vick had the best performance of his career against Joe Duffy. That was the same night that I believe didn't Bisping fight GSP and Joanna might have taken a knockout loss. So basically, it's been a long ass time since Aimann's looked good. And in that fight where he looked good, he was on the wrong end of a devastating, vicious spinning back elbow knockout. And I just don't think he's been the same since, man. I mean, he comes back a few years later against Vince Morales, who, again, we respect anyone that steps in there, but man, I would definitely say Vince Morales is towards the lower end of the totem pole of that division. And to be kind of gun shy against a guy like Vince Morales, I don't know, man. That because like to me, it seems like, hey, look, you took this devastating loss against Ramos. Here's your bounce back fight. He didn't treat it as such. So, man, I'm very low on Aiemann Zahabi in terms of his octagon potential, man. I think that you should go back to coaching with Drako. The time to fade him will come, but this is not the time. I mean, Drako, he's got a professional boxing background, granted only 2 fights against very low-level competition, but he's one of these opportunistic finishers. I mean, you take this guy down, he's going to be searching for subs. The right guy is going to beat him. I just think he's got a little bit more fighting spirit than Aiemann Zahabi at this point. So for that reason, I got to go with Drako via something opportunistic. But I'm not, running to the betting window, all convicted, because I don't think that Drako is, the second coming of Christ like a lot of people are trying to say. I just think that, he's a decent new guy in the UFC. Let's see what he can do. I just think he's a little hungrier than Zahabi, so I'll pick him for that reason.
Yeah, I'm a little more confident on this one. I see Drako rolling here. Zahabi is not UFC level in my opinion, even in his one UFC win against Ronaldo Vera. I mean, that fight was very sloppy. He's very stiff, very flat-footed. He got tagged with shots in that fight. It was just Vieira just quit and really didn't want to fight. Vieira's also not UFC level. So then we turn into the Ramos fight. Ramos is a guy, especially at that time, very loose fighting style and kind of, in my opinion, was clearly the better guy. Just kind of made the fight closer than what it needed to be for 2 rounds, rolling for leg locks and going for these crazy back takes and things that Ricardo Ramos likes to do at times. So I honestly don't think Zahabi's UFC level. I think Drako in his Contender Series, that was a pretty flawless performance. I mean, ran through the guy exactly like he should, showed that he's on a different level. I heard they were going to match this dude up with Chito Vera instead of Helene Hernandez. So I think that he's clearly a level above Aiemann Zahabi. And I think, you don't need to be the second coming of Christ to beat Aiemann Zahabi. I mean, he just lost to a guy that is not UFC level, in my opinion. And like you said, I agree with some of the coaching things and all that good stuff. But I just think Drako Rodriguez just has too fast of counters. I think he'll put the fear in Aiemann Zahabi. I mean, when you go out stiff like that in Madison Square Garden, I mean, and like I said, I really don't think the guy was that good to begin with. I just think not saying that he was bad, but we kind of know things on that side, in terms of the local scene. I mean, just look at some of the guys that come into the UFC from there. It might not be the best. So I think I see Drako Rodriguez getting a finish here. So I'm going with Drako.
I do got to give Aiemann credit, just that, even though he's from Canada, he at least didn't fight in that TKO scene. So his local scene could have been even shittier, Shaq. So at least he wasn't in that TKO scene. But next up in the featherweight division, we got Chaz the Scrapper Skelly. He's 18-3, and Jamall Emmers is 18-5. Currently, they got Jamall Emmers minus 230. The comeback on Chaz Skelly is plus 195. So I've said it many times. Obviously Chaz Skelly, longtime friend of the show. I mean, he's broke down a couple fights with us. We've had some good interactions behind the scenes. Always been a fan of Chaz Skelly. I'm always rooting for him. But I'll be 100% honest with you, man. I don't like this matchup for him, And when I was talking to Skelly, because, this, not saying this is his retirement fight, but I know we're getting there. We're getting pretty close. And I was telling him, and not that my opinion matters, but I was wanting a Charles Rosa fight. I was wanting a Derek Minner fight for Chaz Skelly. I thought that those stylistically presented very winnable matches. Here with Jamall Emmers, it's actually one of these cases where Jamall kind of has him covered across the board, minus the submission aspect. So it's really up to Jamall not having kind of, a mental lapse and screwing this up, because the minutes are going to be won by Jamall Emmers in this fight. He's just simply a much better athlete, and he's got a long UFC career ahead of him. Whereas Skelly, he had the Tommy John surgery. He came back. He beat Jordan Griffin. I felt like that was the perfect fight to go out on. As soon as I heard that this fight got matched up, I was kind of worried for my boy Chaz Skelly. And obviously I'm rooting for him. He's a friend of mine and I wish him the best. But to just be 100% honest and transparent, I'm going to go with Jamall Emmers in the spot via decision, Shaq.
Jamall Emmers is no slouch. He beat Alexander Hernandez back in the day. He's got good wins on his resume. Fought Moises. I remember
Corey Sandhagen.
I remember Dana White saw his fight with Thiago Moises on LFA on the Looking for a Fight show, and he actually said that he thought Jamall Emmers had a lot of potential down the line, and turns out he's in the UFC now. So props to Jamall Emmers. His last fight against Vince Cachero was kind of one of those letdown spots, late replacement, and he just had to do what he had to do to get the win. But I liked his performance against Chikadze, especially in the late rounds. And that was, I don't want to say arguably a 10-8 round, but it was definitely a one-sided round for Jamall Emmers in the third round. And I thought he did fairly good in the second round. Giga Chikadze developed into being arguably, in my opinion, a top 15 featherweight. If he's top 20, top 25 at least. So yeah, I like Chaz Skelly. His ground game is very tricky, those back takes. And I've always said the same thing about Chaz. He starts off very good, but the longer the fight progresses, he tends to slow down. He usually has a big back take, and if he can't get that submission, his legs are gassed out, and then he fatigues and starts taking punishment. So that's kind of where I see this fight going. Jamall Emmers, he needs to be careful because he's had his slip-ups in the past. He has dropped fights to Juicy J. Erosa in fights that he should have won. So we'll see what happens here. But yeah, I think Jamall Emmers is just bigger. Jamall Emmers, man, he's a big boy for 45s. He's got to be cutting a lot of weight. I think he's gonna overpower Chaz here in this spot. But we'll see what happens. Chaz Skelly has one of the more tricky ground games, in my opinion, in that division. He's got some funky little transitions, so Jamall's got to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, Chaz Skelly is one of these guys. If he gets a submission here, I mean, he might be right up there with the most submissions in featherweight history. He's on the cusp of holding that record. I know he wants to go out with it. That's why I wanted the Derek Minner fight for him. And I want to mention also, you talk about how Emmers' last fight was a bit of a letdown spot. Man, I thought he looked amazing. I know, granted, the opponent, you're supposed to look amazing against him, but I don't feel like he played it safe. I felt like we were like, wow, like this guy's got a lot of potential. And then he also gave Giga Chikadze his toughest fight to date. So I think the sky's the limit for this kid. Let's see what he does. And obviously, all respect to Chaz Skelly. If he comes out here and gets a submission, nothing will make me happier. But the pure pick has to be Emmers here. Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Shana Dobson. She's 4-4, and Casey O'Neill is 5-0. Currently, they got Casey O'Neill minus 145. The comeback on Shana Dobson is plus 125. So I know that we enjoy, fading Dobson from time to time. And now, granted, we did not fade her that last fight. I wasn't laying no minus 1,000 on an unproven fighter, Maria Agapova. I definitely picked her there, though. That being said, look, Dobson's definitely got the UFC experience. Despite her record, she's been in there with a much better competition. You think she can make it a second straight upset here against the undefeated newcomer?
Man, this is an interesting fight. Man, this fight kind of reminds me of it almost kind of reminds me of Too Good to Be True, because I'll just be quite frank, honest. Yeah, I know Dobson, I mean, definitely not high on her. I think Agapova pulled a stunt and got that $50,000 from the Cyphers fight and probably not went off the deep end, but just, I know she called out Shana Dobson, but I think she truly thought she was going to get a finish in another, less than a minute type of situation. And I think that she really wasn't ready for a tough fight. And like you said, she lost to the Lauren Mueller loss isn't a good look, that's for sure. But the other losses were to Mazo, who I'm pretty high on, and Cachoeira, who's a big banger in that division. So she has seen the high. And to be honest, Casey O'Neill, man, I mean, I was not in. Yeah, she's got the takedowns, but I mean, she's been fighting nothing but moms, soccer moms, kind of like Nadia Kasim's local level competition. I mean, yeah, she's got the takedowns, but what happens if Dobson's been? I know she's training at Team Elevation. What happens if she can stuff the takedowns a little better? Because I definitely think she's got the better hands. Casey O'Neill striking is very sketchy to me. I wouldn't be shocked if O'Neill came out here and did get the takedowns, but I have a weird feeling that Shana Dobson, after that win, might be a little more confident in herself, maybe a little more comfortable in that cage. I'm not saying I'm high, but I'm actually going to pick Shana Dobson in this one. I feel like this is a little bit too good to be true. Very easy. I mean, look, I understand you got less than minus 200 to fade Shana Dobson, who sucks, yeah, but I think this girl sucks too. That's what I'm saying. I was not impressed at all. She fought nothing but moms. These fights are way too easy, and hasn't been in any tough situations inside the cage. So we'll see. But I'm gonna go with Dobson.
Little fun fact. So normally I'm not the kind of guy to bring up amateur results just because, pro and amateur are two different things. However, from this specific scene that Casey O'Neill comes from, I mean, the level of competition she fought in amateurs isn't that much better than the level she fought at pros. And the reason I bring that up, Shaq, is because, she got knocked out in the first round twice in amateurs, right? I'm talking about Casey O'Neill here. She got knocked out in 1:24 against Hannah Dawson, and she got knocked out in 49 seconds by Sam Egan. So I'm just saying here, just because she, has gone 5-0 against some scrubs, Shana Dobson is by far the best fighter she's ever fought. And don't get me wrong, the time to fade Shana Dobson is going to come very soon. It might even be this weekend. I mean, maybe Casey O'Neill is the next great prospect. But guys, this is not a Yan Zonan versus Kylan Curran situation. This is not a Wiley Zhang versus whoever she fought in her UFC debut situation. Casey O'Neill is not the next big time prospect. So I think that people are a little bitter. They got burnt playing a minus 1,000 on Agapova, so now they want to lay the chalk on this girl. Listen, I won't be surprised if she wins because Shana Dobson is at a much lower level, but that much lower level, look at the level of competition she's fought, man. I mean, she's been in there. Look, I know we make fun of Nico Montano, but Nico Montano has accomplished 100 times more than anybody Casey O'Neill has fought. I know we like to talk a little shit about Roxanne Modafferi. Roxanne Modafferi is a ranked fighter, Shaq. So Sabina Mazo, now she's someone that people are referring to as like the second coming in the women's division. Priscilla Cachoeira, we know how hard she hits. And Maria Agapova was 9-1, had all the hype in the world. the level of competition these two have been fighting is just night and day. So for that reason, I never thought I'd say it. I'm actually going to go with the upset too here, man. Because going into it, I was like, oh, I get to fade Shana Dobson. But then I watched O'Neal. I was like, Jonah Hill, cut. So, yeah.
I was the same way. I was like, yikes, this reminds me of Nadia Kasim's local fights.
And look, if Casey O'Neal was fighting Alex Chambers, okay, because anybody's going to beat Alex Chambers, no disrespect, except Colin Curran. But here, like Shana, like even in like some of her other performances, like I know she got like a finish via a body shot in the UFC. I know it was against a soccer mom, but like that soccer mom's better than anybody Casey O'Neal's fought. So Shana Dobson's got the experience. I got to roll with her here. But again, it wouldn't surprise me if she lost because I still think, look, she's ranked number 158 in the world. Shana Dobson is. So I'm not sitting here saying, she's some top 15 fighter or has the future to go into the ranking. I'm not saying any of that shit whatsoever. All I'm saying is she's the more experienced person here, fought the better level of competition, and Casey O'Neal is probably not who people think she is. So I'm going to go Dobson. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a match between Rafael Alves, he's 19-9, and Pat Sabatini is 13-3. Currently, they got Rafael Alves minus 190. The comeback on Pat Sabatini is plus 150. Listen, man, for two UFC debutants, these guys got some hella experience outside the UFC. I mean, Rafael Alves has been fighting since, 2007? I mean, the guys, when you talk about paying your dues, you talk about Rafael Alves, and Pat Sabatini has beat some decent competition outside the UFC. He submitted Tony Gravely. Not both guys are making that debut. Pat Sabatini is a very popular underdog this week. Who you got, Shaq?
Yeah, this is a very good fight because I'm a little not taken back but surprised. Look, I think Rafael Alves. I don't know if you guys remember, he was on Looking for a Fight, the same episode they found Herbert Burns on. They didn't sign Rafael Alves because he had 9 losses, and Dana White was like, "Damn, dude, why the hell do you have 9 losses?" And he told him that he would give him a Contender Series opportunity, and that's what he got, and he got the contract on Contender Series. So yeah, I know Rafael Alves has 9 losses. But I really just wasn't that impressed with Pat Sabatini. I just think he has a very basic, not much. I know he viciously knocked out a 7-5 guy, but that 7-5 guy, the way I see this fight, I think Pat Sabatini is just basically the way I could describe it, the next local guy up that got the call on short notice. I think Rafael Alves, although he has 9 losses, I think he is in the best spot that he's ever been in his career. I think he's ready to fight real guys right now. I mean, he's the one that got the matchups with Mike Trizano and some of these other guys. I think Rafael Alves is fully developed. He's ready to go right now. I think he's ready to fight real competition right now. I don't think Pat Sabatini is. I think Pat Sabatini is still developing. I think that his competition level, although it looks good on paper, I feel like if you dive into some of those matchups, I feel like Rafael Alves is the much more tested fighter. He's been in there with 17-2, 18-2 type of guys, and just the skill set. Honestly, Rafael Alves has much more to offer, in my opinion. The power, the jiu-jitsu, MMA Masters is an up-and-coming camp. He's training with Covington. I heard Covington has been giving him some advice. He's got very good guys to train with. His camp is very hungry right now. Pat Sabatini, I'm sure he'll be back, but I think this is the lesson that he's going to have to take in his UFC debut to come back stronger. There was nothing impressive. He just got a basic press style, kicks, not much power in his hands other than that knockout. I've seen him dropped and wobbled at times too. I think he's a tough kid, but just nothing that wowed me. I think there was things that wowed me about Rafael Alves, the power, the way he jumped on some of these guillotines and Titan, the way his power, man. I see Rafael Alves coming out here getting the win and honestly getting a finish. I don't think the way he looked on Contender Series at 145 against Yair's teammate, I don't know the dude's name, but he trains with Yair and at that gym in Chicago. That
Flores.
Yeah. But what's that dude's name, man? I forget. But
Flores.
No, I'm talking about the gym. Bilal trains there too. Like
what Chicago fight team?
Valley
man.
Flow. Yeah, Valley Flow. So yeah, he fought a dude from Valley and absolutely dominated him from start to finish, in my opinion. Pat Sabatini, he'll be back, but I just don't think this is the. I think this is a hard welcome to the UFC for him on Saturday night. I think Rafael Alves is ready to go right now.
Yeah, listen, when you talk about paying your dues, you talk about Rafael Alves. This is a guy that started his career in 2007, Shaq, on that Brazilian regional scene. I know people are going to bring up how he's been submitted a bunch of times, but guys, the last time he was submitted was 2015. It's been over a half decade. When you have as many fights as this guy has, almost 30 fights, not every fight is going to go your way. Like, that's just the bottom line. He's got a massive sample size of fights. And with Pat Sabatini, I definitely respect the level of competition he fought on his regional scene. I mean, there's a guy went the distance with Robert Watley, who, is one of the better guys outside the UFC in that division, beat Tony Gravely in the first round, who's currently in the UFC. Had a split decision loss against Jose Mariscal, who also beat Yusuf Zalal. So he's been in there with some guys, but I agree with Shaq. Not actually, I do agree with Shaq. I think that Rafael Alves is the more powerful guy, the more proven guy. And I think right now he's flat out in his prime. I know both guys are the same age, but Alves has been paying his dues for way longer. And I think that now is finally the time when he's going to reap the rewards. I see the calf kicks, the physicality, the jiu-jitsu being a big factor here, Shaq. So I'm going to go with Rafael Alves as well to get it done. Now, also in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Julian Erosa. He's 24-8, and Nate the Train Landwehr is 14-3. Currently, they got it. Nate Landwehr minus 110, and Julian Erosa is minus 110. So right off the bat, Shaq, I was kind of surprised this fight was a pick'em. I was kind of expecting Landwehr to be maybe a minus 150 favorite in this spot, I respect Julian Erosa a lot. He's a very tough guy, and he brings some physical attributes just in the sense that he's 6'1" at featherweight. He's ultra experienced, and he's decent everywhere the fight goes. I really don't have too many bad things to say about Erosa except his durability, and he's been knocked unconscious 4 times officially, but 5 times overall, because you got to include my boy Artem Lobov knocking him out on tough. Remember when Connor jumped over the fence and ripped his pants? That version of Connor was the funniest version of Connor ever. You guys got to go back and watch that season of The Ultimate Fighter. He was just dropping gem after gem. I missed that guy.
He actually, back then, he said Julian Juicy J. Erosa was a phenomenal fighter.
He's like, he kicks and he runs. He plays that game well. He does play that game well. I like Julian Erosa. It's just that, man, you touch him on the chin and the lights are going out. And with Nate Landwehr, he's a guy that a lot of people are kind of low on, but man, I have so much respect for Nate Landwehr because he's a guy here from the South. I think he might be from Tennessee. And, he could have just fought on the regional scene here in the South. He could have even came to the NFC. He was actually scheduled to fight my jiu-jitsu coach, Guy Curry, at one point. The fight fell through. But Nate Landwehr's a guy, a Southern boy from the USA. He goes to Russia in M1, and initially it's like a situation where they're trying to set him up. Oh, who's this fucking American? Like, let's get some of our young Russian up and coming prospects to come out here and beat this guy. Nate Landwehr ends up not just winning in Russia, but becoming an M1 global champion in Russia, to the point where they started accepting him as one of their own. And this is a guy who's got all the personality. He puts on a show. He's a big character. He's walking out with that American flag draped over his shoulders with the sunglasses. You got to love him. But he comes to fight too. He's tough as nails. He gets out of bad positions all the time. He's got an iron chin. I know he got knocked out in his debut by a knee, but aside from that, the guy's got an iron jaw. And I think this is one of those spots where, in that fight against Darren Elkins, I know he gets criticized. It's like, why was Elkins hitting him so much? Guys, Nate Landwehr was so unthreatened by Darren Elkins that he was literally, beating up Darren Elkins. Then he'd be like, Dana, like every couple seconds. So he's a madman. He's a wild man. But I think in this fight, he'll feel slightly more threatened, just in the sense that hey, this is a 6'1" featherweight. This is kind of a different look. So I don't expect him to eat as many clean punches here. But that being said, these two, there's two bulls. They're going to lock horns, but I think the more durable man's going to win. And I think that's Nate Landwehr here, man. So I'm going Nate Landwehr, and I do think that there's some value at the pick'em price, Shaq.
Yeah, I definitely think Landwehr can take shots better. I think Erosa's got better offense, striking offense. I think Landwehr's very slappy. I think his offense, it takes him a while to get going. I don't want to say he's a slow starter, but in some of those fights in Russia, he got rocked, but he would stay on the guys and eventually outlast them, end up breaking them in the late rounds. And that could possibly be the case here. Julian or Erosa, even though he's tall, honestly, he kind of fights in the phone booth, to be honest. He kind of presses a lot. And the Arce fight definitely wasn't a fight at range, and neither was the Sean Woodson fight. I mean, he was in the pocket throwing and trading, and he still got dropped in that Sean Woodson fight after that great second round that he had. So that chin issue, it's not even a chin issue. The dude just fights with his hands down, and he doesn't have the chin. If he put his hands up, I'm sure he'd have better success. But yeah, it's a good fight. I wasn't that. I thought Landwehr was a little better in my mind than what he came out to be on tape. I think that he's still a good guy, but he is a lot shorter. I definitely lean him, though. I think that he's the tougher guy, the guy that can take shots better. It's just he did get knocked out by a jiu-jitsu guy. Yeah, it was a knee, but even in some of his offense in that fight, very slow, very telegraphed, but maybe he's a slow starter. So I think that he'll struggle a little bit early. I'd see Juicy J touching him with some jabs, maybe some straight shots or in the early goings. But the longer the fight goes, Julian, those hands drop, and so does he. So I see Landwehr probably winning. Winning the second and third round and getting the decision win. Landwehr takes a lot of damage. I know he was unthreatened by Darren Elkins, but at the same time, I've never seen Darren Elkins bloody someone up like that standing in a very long time. So we'll see what happens.
Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got the former WEC champion, Eddie Wineland. He's 24-14, and John Castaneda is 17-5. Currently, they got John Castaneda minus 120. The comeback on Eddie Wineland is plus 100. So Eddie Wineland, man, so much respect for the guy. WEC bantamweight champion. He's had a bunch of great fights in the UFC. Nothing but good thing. Firefighter, father. I mean, what bad can you say about Eddie Wineland? As a person, but as a fighter, his footwork's great. His hands are great. But, man, he fights with his hands down and his chin up, and he's been doing this for years. And he paid for it against Johnny Eduardo and cashed that plus 750 ticket. He paid for it against Sean O'Malley. And when he pays for it bad, Shaq. Now, I understand this kid Castaneda, I'm not going to disrespect a 17-5 fighter and call him harmless, because that would be kind of disrespectful. But you'd have to go all the way back to 2017 against Chris Beal. Remember Chris Beal? To find his last knockout win. Now, I'm not saying it can't happen here, because Eddie Wineland wasn't just knocked out his last fight. He was wiped out. He was demolished. That was like one of those, I don't like to throw around the term life changers, but that was one of those. That was one of those scary knockouts where you don't want to see the guy come back for at least a year or two, maybe ever. He's coming back now. I mean, who am I to tell him differently? But I'm going to go with John Castaneda here. Look, I know that he's not an overwhelming fighter. I know that, he's not going to blow anyone away, but I think he can just slightly be a little more active than Eddie Wineland and just be the more durable guy in the spot. I think Eddie might be a little more gun shy coming off that knockout loss. Look, I think this was a couple of years ago. I think Eddie Wineland smokes this kid. But where they are, I think Castaneda's kind of meeting him at the right spot in his career. I think he can edge a decision. So I'll go with the man known as the Sexy Mexi. I'll go with John Castaneda here to get it done.
Yeah. This is a good fight because Eddie, he is getting up there. He is on the tail end. But, man, I kind of feel like this guy, John Castaneda, I don't want to compare him. He kind of reminds me of Jerome Rivera, just slightly better, man. I feel feel like he struggles to be aggressive. I feel like he's a point fighter. And I feel like Eddie Wineland only loses to a certain level of dudes. And Eddie suffered many vicious KO beatings and come back and knock guys out. That's nothing new to Eddie. He got knocked out against Hennen, came back and won some fights. He got knocked out against Johnny Eduardo, viciously jaw broken, came back and won some fights. And he got knocked out against Sean O'Malley, and guess what he's gonna do? He's gonna come back and win some more fights, man. I don't think this guy John Castaneda is on the level. You need to be Eddie Wineland. It's just one of those things where I don't like that trade, especially at minus money. Where a guy is hesitant and gun shy, and that's the guys in the Combate America scene just because they did bully him, they did go forward, and Castaneda honestly probably was better than those guys, but there was just a lack of fire, in my opinion. He doesn't, like you said, I don't think this guy has the power to knock Eddie out. We have seen Eddie lose to some weasels, like Alejandro Perez in the past, but I don't even think Castaneda's on that level. I know Eddie's old, but I think this is a trap, man. I think that I know it's minus 125 to fade a dude that just got, but bro, imagine what Sean O'Malley would floor this dude Castaneda and send him into the fifth row. And I know he fought Nathaniel Wood and went all 15 minutes, but man, I really wasn't impressed with either guy in that fight, to be honest. So man, I honestly see Eddie Wineland. I think he should be the favorite. I think he only loses to ranked guys or guys that are, relevant. Alejandro Perez was once ranked. Brian Caraway used to be a former top 5 guy. Who else? Who else did he lose to? Sean O'Malley, even though he's not ranked, he was ranked at one point. He was number 15 at one point. Who else did he lose to? Johnny Eduardo was ranked at one point. He only loses to guys that are ranked. I don't think Castaneda has that type of potential. I don't think he is that right now. So I'm going with Eddie Wineland for a classic vicious knockout win.
So you're saying you don't think John Castaneda fights like a true Mexican warrior?
His nickname says it. No offense. He's sexy Mexi. He fights pretty. He likes to touch and run. I don't think he's got the recipe to come in here and get dirty with Eddie Wineland for a victory. We know the guys that I mentioned have that trait, back in the day. And shout out to Caraway. He's going through some tough times right now. But Caraway beat Aljamain Sterling. Johnny Eduardo, in his prime, Johnny Eduardo used to be a bad boy back in the day. Who else? Uriah Faber. Look at the dudes that Eddie loses to, man. Like, you have to be good to beat Eddie. And I don't see John Castaneda being that. Joseph Benavidez. The list goes on and on.
Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Drakkar Klose, he's 11-2, and Luis Violent Bob Ross Pena is 8-3. Currently, they got Drakkar Klose minus 175. The comeback on Luis Pena is plus 150. As soon as this fight got matched up, you had some choice words. You messaged me, so I'll let you take this one first. What do you think about this fight between Klose and Pena?
Yeah, I just think Luis is making a bad move. Look, I'm sure maybe he didn't have a choice, maybe he did, but I honestly think he did have a choice. But this doesn't surprise me just due to some of his past comments. I remember when this dude only had like 6 or 7 fights, he was trying to fight dudes like Mark Diakase and other things like that. So I already know the dude has a tendency to get ahead of himself, and this just stems because sometimes you give these kids too much popularity off these tough shows and off these and he kind of was one of them. He had a big following, the whole Violent Bob Ross thing, and I still think Luis will have a good future, but this is not the logical step you want to take. Matt Frivola, was a split decision, but Matt Frivola isn't a top, it's like what, top 40, 50, somewhere in that range. Where is Matt Frivola ranked in the lightweight?
43.
43. And I thought he lost that fight just due to the fact that Matt Frivola outworked him, and that's been a issue for him in the past. When things get gritty, when things get tough, when Mike Trezano was jabbing him in the face in Colorado, he didn't like it. He was shaking his head. And then you flip that into the Matt Frevola fight, and he landed a good knee. But we know my boy Steamroller gets wobbled in damn near every single fight. And then we turn that into the he beat Steve Garcia, who took the fight on very short notice, and Matt Wiman, and quite frankly, it took him longer than I expected. I mean, I was sitting there front row. I was like, I mean, any day, Luis, like we can we can Matt Wiman shouldn't be taking this long. But then we go into the Kama Worthy fight, who's another. Tell me what Kama Worthy is ranked. I'm guessing somewhere in the same range as Frevola, 40, 50 in that range. And
46.
46, and he got finished. When things got tough, when they were trading blows, Luis Pena did not like it, and he actually got submitted. And I don't even know how many submissions Kamaworthy has on his career record, but I'm guessing it ain't that many. And now you mean to tell me you're gonna take a fight with Drakkar Klose? And I'm not sitting here and trying to act like Drakkar Klose is the best guy in the world, but tell me what Drakkar Klose is ranked. If I'm guessing in the 25, in the top 25,
21.
21, yeah. So even though he only lost to Beneil Dariush, who's look at what he's doing right now. The dude's having spectacular performance after spectacular performance. Then he only lost to David Tamor, who's only got one loss on his record, to Charles Oliveira. This is not the step you want to take. I think Drakkar Klose, look, whether it's a dominant win, I just don't see him losing this fight. I think he's better wrestler, more power in his hands, more physical. I mean, we've seen what Drakkar can do when guys aren't on his level. I mean, he'll push him around, he'll bully him. I know you remember that Lando Venata fight back in the day. I personally, I know I'm in the minority, but I actually thought he won the Bobby Green fight. But I know a lot of people thought he lost that one. But I just think he's going to be too physical, and I think it's going to be another issue again. I'm sure Luis will pop him with some jabs, but when it gets tough, when it gets rough, and they're grinding in that clinch, and Drakkar's stomping on them legs and doing the calf kicks, I really think he's not going to like it. And I see Drakkar kind of just bullying him and kind of big brothering him in there. And I think Luis will go back to the drawing board and go back to the level that you're supposed to be fighting at, man. You're not supposed to be fighting a top 25 guy. You couldn't even beat two top 50 guys. So I'm going with Drakkar Klose here by 30-27 decision.
I hope we see some improvements from Pena. I mean, he's only 27 years old. Obviously, he's got a lot of physical attributes, 6'3" with a 75-inch reach at lightweight. So I'm hoping that we can see some evolution in his game since the last time we saw him fight. It's been over 6 months since that time. So hopefully he's made some strides, because if not, Drakkar Klose is not one of these guys that you want to come in here when you're still kind of figuring out parts of your game and, you're not quite confident, you're not quite sure, because Drakkar Klose, one thing about him, he is a bit of a bully. He's got a good calf kick game, good pressure, just knows how to kind of grind out these wins, and sometimes the fights are a bit too close for my liking, but he always finds a way to pull it out in the end, and that's a quality I definitely respect. And also the level of competition he's been fighting is much higher than Luis Pena. No disrespect, that's just the facts. I mean, he's coming off a good fight with Beneil Dariush. I know he got finished, and I know he lost the first round as well, but still, to have that experience against Benny, it's a different experience than anything Luis Pena has ever had. And also to beat guys like Bobby Green, Jacasey, like he's actually been in there with some people. So I think that we saw a guy in Matt Frevola calf kicking Luis Pena. Frevola is known for his wrestling. Drakkar Klose has got some. I mean, he's originally from the MMA lab where they were one of the first gyms to bring the calf kicks to the forefront.
Invented the calf kick.
I mean, you remember when Benson Henderson dropped Frankie with a calf kick in one of their championship fights? Also dropped him with an up kick, but dropped him with a couple calf kicks too, man.
The forefathers for that technique, man.
That was before they shit, I forgot what I was gonna say. But bottom line is that Drakkar Klose is just a little bit too physical for Luis Pena. And don't get me wrong, I think that Pena is gonna have his moments. I think that he's gonna do some good things down the line, but taking this on a week notice, he's probably got to finish to win this fight. I don't see him doing it, so I'm going Drakkar Klose here. All right. Now, next up, hey, Shaq, you still there, bro? I don't see you.
Yeah, 1 second.
Okay, cool. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got Jared Flash Gordon. He's 16-4, and Danny Chavez, the Colombian Warrior, is 11-3. Currently, they got Danny Chavez minus 150. The comeback on Jared Gordon is plus 120. Listen, I was very impressed with Danny Chavez UFC debut. I think that he's a very explosive guy. I think he's got nice calf kicks. He comes from a great gym in MMA Masters, and I think he's in his prime right now. He's 33 years old. I'm very excited about what he does in the future. And with Jared Gordon, I know that, we've made some good money fading him in the past, but, granted, Neto, BJJ, Joaquin Silva, and some of these other guys he's lost to are serious fighters, man, whether it's Charles Oliveira, whether it's Carlos Diego Ferreira. So he's been in there with some real dudes. And I do think that in the early going that this kid Chavez can present some problems to Jared Gordon for sure. I think he's much faster. I think he's the more athletic guy. I think he hits a lot harder. Here's my concern, Shaq. So Chavez kind of seems to me like one of these guys that he kind of fights at a bit of a slower pace. And if you're not pressuring him, if you kind of just stay on the outside with him, I mean, he's going to absolutely school you. But if Jared Gordon can avoid, taking some of those fight-changing blows in that first round, which big if, Shaq, because we know he's been knocked out more than once. But if he can avoid some of these fight-ending blows in the early going, I think that his pressure can actually get to Danny Chavez down the stretch. And if he starts mixing in takedowns, look, Chavez looked really damn good defending takedowns against TJ Brown, but I felt like TJ Brown was already badly compromised by that calf kick. And all due credit to Danny Chavez for getting him to that point. But I think Jared Gordon's a little bit better than TJ Brown. He's more experienced. He's paid his dues. It's just, how's this first round going to go? That's the big question for me. So if Jared can kind of avoid taking any fight-changing blows or getting debilitated by that calf kick, I do actually kind of think that in the second and third rounds, his pressure can get to Danny Chavez in this spot. And I know Chavez is a very popular pick here because he looked amazing in his debut. But I think that Gordon might be getting a little disrespected. And I'm the first one that wants to fade Jared Gordon, but I do think that if he can put the pressure on in the second and third rounds and get on top of this guy, I actually think he can win this fight. So I might be way off here. He might get knocked out, but I'm going to go with Jared Gordon to win a very gritty decision here down the stretch.
Yeah, I think either way you look at it, this fight is going to be tough for either side. I think it's lined accurately, give or take either side. I don't think either side is getting disrespected in terms of the betting side. Chavez, like you said, he's ready to go right now. He's 33 years old. He's ready to jump up in competition. And Gordon, that last fight, I consider that, like I said about Condit, a nice little 15-minute workout. Get your feet comfy back in there. Get loosened back up for this next run at 45s. And that's exactly what he did. He had a nice 15-minute ass whooping of Chris Fishgold. And Gordon, he actually is better than I thought. He's got some nice methodical pressure. He does not stop. Even though it's very slow and stiff, I mean, just progressively throughout the 15 minutes, if he hasn't been dropped 2 or 3 times, it will start to get to you just because it's a very consistent, slow, methodical pace. So we'll see what happens. Danny Chavez, like you said, it could be a little bit of recency. Like I said in the past, this could be a little bit of the next best thing spot right here. Danny Chavez is from the hot camp. He looked really good against TJ Brown, but TJ Brown, honestly, man, I don't know if you've seen some of the stunts TJ Brown's pulled in the past. So that fight, I mean, that's just the honest facts. I mean, he's kind of like a Maki Patolo character with some of the stunts I've seen him pull in the past. So I think that Danny Chavez, that was a nice spot. But there was definitely the calf kick, the speed early. But one thing I noticed, as he started to get tired, as TJ Brown would pressure him after, I mean, that calf kick game plan, that takes a lot of energy to
to whip those things in and out. And I think as the fight progressed, you could see that he starts to square his stance with his hands down as he's tired. And if he does that against Gordon, Gordon at some point will start to get to him. So I see this fight being a tough fight either way. Just because you went with Gordon, I'll go with Danny Chavez to kind of a situation where maybe he wins like the first 8 minutes of this fight, first half of this fight, and Gordon wins the last half, and it's going to be one of those greasy, slimy, split decision type of calls. That's where I kind of see this fight headed towards. But I'll go with Chavez to eke it out. It's going to be a tough fight, though.
So in other words, you're saying it's a dog or pass situation.
Yeah, I think that Chavez looked good, but we can't sit here and act like he's the second coming of Christ. I mean, TJ Brown, just got choked out with a choke I ain't never even seen before. So, I think that he looked good, but Jared Gordon trains at a good camp. He's training at Hard Knocks 3, not Hard Knocks, but what's it called now? Sanford MMA, and he's trained at good camps in the past. He used to train at Rufus Sport and Neto BJJ. Honestly, it's sad because Gordon looked good in that fight. I mean, he just got carried away. He's too much of a brawler sometimes. But I think if he can just chill out on that a little bit and just, pick your shots, he can have some success. And he only lost to Neto, which he looked good in, Carlos Diego Ferreira, who's a top 10 guy. Who else? Charles DuBronx Oliveira, which we already knew he wasn't going to win that fight. I don't know why he took that fight. I guess you can't turn a fight with Charles down, but no shame in that at all. So he's definitely seen a lot more stuff in the cage than my boy, the Colombian Warrior.
Well, now it's time to break down the main card. Before we do, all our fans watching, thank you very much for being up early with us. Do us a huge favor and give this video a like and a subscribe. We truly appreciate it. It helps out the channel tremendously. Now, next up in the heavyweight division, we got a matchup between the former heavyweight champion, Andrei Arlovski. He's 30-19, and Tom Aspinall is 9-2. Currently, they got Tom Aspinall minus 250. The comeback on Andrei Arlovski is plus 210. So, Shaq, I know that I got burnt, betting against Arlovski his last two fights against Philippe Linge and Tanner Boser. So, and a lot of people did too. So now a lot of people are jumping on the Arlovski train in this spot. And I actually think that that's kind of a mistake. I think that the time to jump on the Arlovski train was the last two fights. I just called those wrong. I think I'm calling this one right. Listen, what's been the biggest criticism for Tanner Boser? All the media members would get on his last nerve asking him about how, hey, man, you think you can drop to 205? Hey, man, you're one of the smaller heavyweights. Hey, like, when you drop in light heavyweight? And Tanner Boser would always be like, dude, like, I'm winning these fights. Like, why the fuck would I drop to 205? There's not a single soul on planet Earth that is asking the 6'5", 265-pound Tom Aspinall when he's dropping to 205 pounds. With Philippe Linge, the whole thing was, hey, he won the $1 million championship at PFL. But a lot of hardcore fans were kind of questioning the drug testing in PFL. Is it a bit lenient? Is this guy going to look kind of soft in the UFC? What's the transition going to be like? There's not a single soul on planet Earth that is expecting Tom Aspinall to come into this fight looking soft. Now, I understand Aspinall's never seen the third round in a fight. But, we can't really sit here and hold that against him. It's not his fault that these guys can't go past the first round with him. And so I heard someone say, hey, the 2 times he went past the first round, he lost. It's like, guys. Firstly, his last loss, he knocked the guy out, but they called it an illegal elbow. So, do you really consider that a loss in 2016 when he Travis Brown, the guy, knocked him out? So people are saying the 2 times he went past the first round, he lost. To me, it's like, okay, one of them was a Matt Hamill, John Jones situation where Aspinall was clearly better, because people are implying if he goes past the first round, he's just going to gas, where it's like that fight where he knocked that guy out with the illegal elbow, he wasn't gassing, man. He just hit him in the back of the head with an illegal blow, got DQ'd. So his only real loss, he got heel hooked in 2015, over half a decade ago. So to me, I'm like, I think Tom Aspinall is legit. Look, I understand the level of competition has been shitty, but look how he's been handling them, and look at the physical traits he brings to the table. 6'5", the 78-inch reach. He's 265 pounds. He's also just a kid. He's only 27. I feel like he's one of the young, bright, up and coming heavyweight prospects. I mean, listen, I'm not going to compare him to Cyril Gane in terms of skills, but what I will say is, when Cyril Gane fought JDS, he hadn't fought shit up until that point. When Yair Rozenstruik fought Andrei Arlovski, he hadn't fought shit up until that point. So to me, so what? Like, this is his chance to step up in competition. And after he knocks out Arlovski in the first round, his very next fight, people are going to say the same thing. Oh, he's never been past the first round, or every time he's been past the first round, he's lost. So, yeah, I'm not buying that narrative, man. I don't think that Arlovski can just make this another slow-paced fight where, you know, both guys barely throw anything and Arlovski wins a close, controversial split decision. I don't see that happening here. I think there's too much firepower on the Aspinall side. I think his punches come straight down the pipe. I think that he's actually been sparring his boxing with Tyson Fury. I mean, if that's not going to elevate your game, I don't know what will. He's also in there with guys like Grundy and Darren Till at Team Cowbon. And I hear he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu under a pretty damn legit lineage. So I like Tom Aspinall. I'm staying on the Tom Aspinall train, and I think he knocks out Andrei Arlovski in the first round Saturday night, Shaq.
Yeah, this is a good fight. Aspinall, like you said, he hasn't fought anybody. Not his fault. I mean, the local scene for heavyweight, the heavyweight market on the local scene, you know, it's not very good sometimes. You know, there's only a few, so many heavyweights out there to fight. So it's not necessarily his fault that he hasn't fought anybody. At least he goes out there and he marches the dudes down and he knocks them out accordingly. It's tough to say because, I mean, we can name about, you know, 20 guys that would go out there and knock these guys out, like Jake Collier and Alan Boda, you know, Dalcha, my boy Dalcha Langan-Bula knocked that dude out unconscious as well. So yeah, I like what I've seen from Aspinall, but at the same time, it's like, you know, how much stock should I put into him beating these dudes that he's beating? Yeah, the hand speed looks good, and he's actually not 265 because he kind of, there's no way he's 265. He's got to be lighter than that.
Who, Tommy?
Yeah, Aspinall.
Okay, let's see. I'll tell you exactly. So he weighed in. Okay, you're right. 252 against Badeau, and okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so he's honestly, and I like that. Because Arlovski kind of has a speed advantage over a lot of these big 265 guys, and it kind of frustrates them. And I kind of disagree on the Tanner Boser fight. Boser, his volume definitely wasn't there. Too much waiting. Felipe Lins threw, but he kind of, like you said, Aspinall throws straight punches, but Felipe Lins was swinging these big, wide, loopy hooks that just kept missing, while Arlovski was just jabbing and weaseling him. So I honestly think Aspinall, with the age gap, that's one good thing going for him. The fact that he hasn't had, you know, some of the Tanner Boser is just an average guy. Like, people tried to hype him up because he I know he knocked out Lins and that other dude, but that other dude was a complete can. So I was honestly surprised to see Tanner Boser line that high, and turns out I was right. I mean, Arlovski put out the win, but yeah, I don't know. I think Aspinall's gonna knock him out early. I don't have that necessarily Rozenstruik type of feel, you know. Rozenstruik, but like you said, Rozenstruik really hadn't fought anybody, but his knockouts are kind of a little more spectacular, in my opinion. They were like 9 seconds. I was there for one of them, right? Yeah, and one of them was like real quick with a jab, and the other one against Albini, I mean, that was vicious. Aspinall, I honestly didn't think leading up to the knockout against Badeau, I thought he kind of looked sloppy, to be honest. So we'll see. But I'll pick Aspinall for the win. I just don't know how much stock I should put in this. I can name about 30 guys that would knock out Alan Badeau. I mean, my boys, middleweights are out here. Like, Dalcha Langan-Bula knocked Alan Badeau out. So it's like, I mean, yeah, he knocked him out, but that's what he should have done. I want to see Tom Aspinall do something. So I'm super excited for his fight this weekend.
I can name 130 people that would be Alan Badeau, but beating the Alan Badeau isn't why I'm picking him here. I think he's got the speed, the size, and the youth. And let's see if he's the real deal or not. I can't wait to find out. All I know is this ain't no Tanner Bozer where everyone's asking him, hey, when you going to 205? And this ain't no Felipe Lins where everyone's like, hey, how are you going to make that transition? This is a completely different beast, and he's one of these young heavyweights. So, and he throws his punches straight down the pipe. So let's see what happens. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Nassourdine Imavov, the French sniper. He's 9-2. He's taking on Phil Megatron Hawes, who's 9-2. Currently, they got Phil Hawes minus 130. The comeback on Nassourdine Imavov is plus 110. So the very popular underdog pick this week is Nassourdine Imavov. I have not seen a single soul on Phil Hawes. And the reason being is that there's this narrative going around that Phil Hawes is first round or bust. Now, guys, I think Shaq explained this in the past. I'm going to explain it right now because I really took a look into this and was like, man, his early career was a bit mismanaged. I mean, why was a 3-0 guy going in there against Andrew Sanchez? Why was a 4-0 guy going in there against Lewis Taylor, the PFL $1 million winner, the guy that knocked out Magomedov? Why was a 4-1 guy in there with Julian Marquez? So he's fighting all these guys before he's even had 5 pro fights. Of course he lost those fights. Now he's had the chance to pay his dues. And I mean, we're talking about an athletic freak. We're talking about a guy with one-punch knockout power. We're talking about a D1 wrestler. And I think that after that Marquez fight, I think that now he knows how to pace himself better. I think those are the kind of lessons you got to learn. When they throw you in there with such experienced guys so early into your career, it's sink or swim. And look at him now. He won his first UFC fight. I know, against I know who it was against, but so what? I think that now he's ready to go on a run. And with this kid, Nassourdine Imavov, he's a bit of a tough-nosed guy where you start to slow down on Nassourdine Imavov, and I mean, he will get dirty in there with you. He will tee off on you. So if Phil Hawes does blow his load in that first round, then Nassourdine can take over in the second and third. The thing is, man, I think that Phil Hawes has learned from his mistakes. I think he's more mature now, and I think that he can win the first round. I think he can win the second and the third. I think he can mix in his wrestling. I think he can stay on top. I mean, look, I respect Jordan Williams a lot. I mean, this is a guy who first ever diabetic in UFC history. So Jordan Williams, man, you're a hero for a lot of people. But Jordan Williams, a lot of people consider him to be a welterweight. And if he's not a welterweight, he's one of the smaller middleweights. And Jordan Williams was pushing Nassourdine Imavov around in that first round. I just think that Phil Hawes is too physical, too fast, too explosive, too dynamic, and he's paid his dues, most importantly, Shaq. So I'm going Phil Hawes via first-round knockout.
Yeah, I'm higher on Phil Hawes than most. I bet him his last fight. I thought he got extremely disrespected against that guy that he fought. And Nassourdine, solid guy. This matchup kind of reminds me of one that happened not too long ago. I think someone tweeted it out. It was Pena and Dusko. You got Nassourdine, who's maybe has quicker, sharper hands, but he fights with his hands completely down. And you got Phil Hawes, who's got the nicer, tighter, defense, at least now, maybe not early in his career, that throws devastating concussive knockout blows. And yeah, Nassourdine might be better overall, but man, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Phil Hawes to clip him. And I think that Phil Hawes, like you said, they pushed the issue with him too much. He was 3-0. He fights Andrew Sanchez, loses. You're supposed to go back to the local scene. Instead, he fights. He puts himself in that tournament against Luis Taylor, who's got like 16 fights at the time, and he got. They tried to push the issue. Then they tried to push the issue again with Julian Marquez, who has a winning UFC record, and we saw what happened. And then Phil, he could have packed it in, but he actually moved to Thailand. He went on one of those hiatuses. Then he signed with Brave, knocked out some guys out there, very well traveled. And I feel like he's a lot more mature and just has more rounds, more training rounds, more cage time rounds. You can't fight those type of dudes that early in a career. I see it a lot of times on the local scene. These dudes try to fight, the number one prospect on the scene in their third fight. It's like, relax, bro. You got time. You don't have to to fight him right now. So yeah, I see Phil Hawes, and I know Nassourdine's a popular underdog pick, but I think this is also stemming from a lot of people are under the impression that Phil Hawes went running scared or something, because this fight got pulled a few weeks ago. And this is the classic rebook mistake, man. I fell for this trap sometimes. You have a bet on Nassourdine the first time, and Phil Hawes pulls out, and you're a little emotional about it because Phil Hawes pulled out the day of the fight, and then you take a worse line and you bet him again. I think the line is down like 30-40 cents from last time. So we'll see. But I'm going with Phil Hawes. I think he clips Nassourdine Imavov very early in the first round. I think Nassourdine will be popping him with that jab early, but at some point I see one of them big left hooks overhand rights getting through him and Nassourdine going down. So I'm going with Phil Hawes.
Next up in the heavyweight division, we got Alexei the Boa Constrictor Oleinik. He's 59-14. Excuse me, 59-14. He's taking on Chris Daukaus, who's 10-3. Currently, they got Chris Daukaus minus 200. The comeback on Alexei is plus 170. So, Shaq, this is funny because when Chris Daukaus first got signed in the UFC, I made the whole joke about, there's the good brother and the shitty brother. And I was under the impression that Kyle Daukaus was the good brother and Chris Daukaus was the shitty brother, because if you look at some of his regional fights, he was kind of this fat guy, but man, he's made a transition. He's made a transformation. He's lost a bunch of weight. His hand speed is ridiculous for the weight class. He's a black belt too. It actually turns out both the Daukaus brothers are pretty damn good. However, Chris Daukaus is the one fighting a ranked opponent first. Chris Daukaus is the one that's undefeated in the UFC. And Chris Daukaus, if he gets a win Saturday night, he will be a ranked heavyweight. So, listen, Alexei Oleinik's had so many damn fights. I mean, he's won 45 fights via submission, Shaq. I mean, he takes your back. There's a good chance you're getting strangled. And you already know about my boy's schoolyard headlock that he's hit even on Mirko Krokop back in the day, by the way. So, great fight. I know you've actually been higher on Daukaus than many, and you called it from the jump. You think your heavyweight prospect wins the biggest fight of his career?
Yeah, I have been impressed with Daukaus. It kind of did surprise me. I was kind of more on the same thing, saying Daukaus was the better little bro, until I saw the Parker Porter fight. I was like, God, holy shit. Like, buddy just got smoked. Like, that was a vicious knockout. Daukaus, what separates him from at least these up-and-coming heavyweights, I'm putting him in that group with the Aspinalls, and this fight kind of reminds me of Aspinall's fight. But I feel like I have slightly more facts on Chris Daukaus. Chris Daukaus, he actually also was submitted back in the day with I think it was a key lock or something like that, similar to Aspinall. Took a submission loss, and you can't forget Arlovski's got a classic heel hook win in the UFC. I know you remember that back in the day.
Sylvia, right?
I mean, he won the title off that. So I think that look, Alexei is definitely the better grappler. Like you said, 40-something submission wins. But how many lives does Alexei have left? I mean, my goodness. And to be honest, I honestly think Alexei's time might be running out. Just look at the last stretch. He fought Alistair Overeem, got viciously knocked out. He followed up with a knockout loss against Walt Harris, who, in my opinion, at the time was an up-and-comer. Then he fought Maurice Green, and Maurice Green, in my opinion, is a jobber. Look, I know Alexei was in mount for a lot of that fight and did his thing with the scarf hold and all that good stuff. But I saw John Vellante in mount on Maurice Green as well. So Maurice and just look at I'm not surprised Alexei beat that level guy. Maurice Green's a guy that barely beat Jeff Hughes, who barely beat Vellante. Maurice Green is very, very shaky. Chris Daukaus is standing out from the competition. I know Parker Porter and Nascimento might not be that good, but he absolutely blew them out of the water in very, very quickly. Those two dudes, and Parker Porter bounced back and won a fight. He's actually fighting Chase Sherman coming up. So, and Nascimento was undefeated, and Daukaus went out there and made an example out of him. And then, he had the win over Maurice Green, beat Verdum. Verdum's a legend of the sport. But look, I know on his resume he beats Verdum, and I understand a guy that beat Verdum is a underdog to a guy I've never heard of. Look, I understand, but Verdum wasn't ready to fight. Verdum was coming off a 2-year steroid suspension, and he just didn't look like he was ready to fight up until the 3rd round, in my opinion. I think he just woke up too late, and he's a liability standing, man. I truly believe that Chris Daukaus only needs about 20 to 30 seconds in space, just a couple of pocket exchanges to get Alexei Olenek out unconscious. I think he's that accurate with his punches. I think that his counters are that sharp. I mean, just look at the accuracy of that left hook on Nascimento, 51-second knockout. Parker Porter, those are 3-4 punch combinations in the heavyweight division. Lighter, faster, sharper, very humble. He's not one of these cocky dudes that think he's the king shit. He's paid his dues. He, that loss to Anzu, yeah, he's got a loss to Anzu on his record, and yeah, it might not be a good look, but if you actually watch that fight, man, that's when everything changed. I mean, that's when he started dropping the weight. He was whooping up on Anzu. I mean, it was a devastating beating. He just got super tired and he got caught. So yeah, I see Chris Daukaus coming out here and doing something similar to what Walt Harris did. I know he was on top of Black Beast, and it's something he's got to watch out. But I think he makes good decisions in the clinch, man, with the way he maneuvers in there. Like him and Parker Porter were tied up in that clinch, and he was cracking him with shots over the top on his head and wobbling him. So I'm going with Chris Daukaus by 1st round starching of Alexei Olenek, getting into that top 10. I just don't see how Alexei avoids this knockout. I know he's going to try to grab him, but I think Chris Daukaus playing about black belt, at least I think he's got the skills to avoid this. So I'm going with Chris Daukaus.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing here. It's not like this is black belt versus white belt or striker versus grappler. This isn't a case where, one takedown and the fight will be over shortly after for Olenek. I don't think, at least. I mean, don't get me wrong. He does have 45 submission wins, and he's got Ezekiel chokes. He's got schoolyard headlocks. He's got the whole bit. I mean, Alexei is such a legend. I love the guy. But Daukaus, stylistically speaking, look, oftentimes when it's kind of the newer guy versus the vet, and the newer guy is chalk, that it can get kind of sketchy. But then there's times when it comes through, like Jamall Hill versus OSP. Jamall Hill was only 2-0, 3-0 in the UFC at the time. He was a -175 favorite over a former title challenger, and he took care of business. Now, I'm not sitting here saying Chris Daukaus is the next Jamall Hill, because I have said Jamall Hill is a future top 5 guy, but I think Daukaus' hand speed, like you already mentioned, is definitely going to give Alexei fits, and I think he's got the wherewithal on the mat to either keep the standing or get back up or survive until the round ends. Next round starts up on the feet. So I'm going with the favorite here as well, man. Let's see. I think this is very good matchmaking, by the way. I think they know exactly what they're doing, and this is the perfect.
They're hoping that Aspinall and Chris Daukaus come through on Saturday night.
Yeah, and they're not going to match them up either. If they do win, they're just going to weave out the next. They're going to do like Ben Rothwell and Aspinall. You know what I'm saying?
Daukaus versus JDS.
Oh man, it's like Aspinall and Daukaus are like trying to get a more impressive performance to see who gets JDS next. You know what I mean, Chad? So it's gonna be one of those cases. I got Daukaus. And featured bout in the featherweight division, we got Derek Minner. He's 25-11. He's taking on Charles Boston Strong Rosa, who's 13-4. Currently, they got Charles Rosa -200. The comeback on Derek Minner is +158. So, I mean, we know the deal with Derek Minner. He's going to go balls to the wall for the first 3 minutes, just like he does every single fight. I mean, Derek Minner has 20 first-round submissions on his record, man. The guy will dangle off next, and if you're not quite ready in that aspect of the game, he's going to submit you pretty damn quick. I mean, you saw what happened to that kid, TJ Laramie, the most hyped prospect of the TKO scene in Canada. Under a minute, but you already know how that TKO scene is, Shaq. But Charles Rosa is very proven, man. I mean, Charles Rosa is a guy who went to a split decision with Yair Rodriguez. And the only reason I bring that fight up is because in that fight, he was in a deep triangle choke attempt. He survived that. In the Bryce Mitchell fight, he got taken down right away, was in a locked-in arm triangle choke, survived that as well. So I know his submission defense is very, very, very on point. And that's going to need to be the case here because Derek Minner, if he gets into some of those spots that Bryce Mitchell had him in the first round, especially early, Derek Minner is a finisher. Derek Minner can close the show. Like I said, 20 first-round submissions. I mean, and now he's training with James Krause. He's in there with the right people. So a first-round finish, even though Rosa's never been submitted, is not gonna surprise me here. Just considering the bad spots Rosa's been in the past. It's just that if this goes past the first round, the momentum has to sway towards Rosa's favor. And I don't think it's going to be by a considerable margin. I don't think that Rosa is just going to destroy him in the second and third. I think it's more of a case where Minner can win the first kind of dominantly, and then Rosa can kind of squeak by the second and then maybe get the submission in the third. So if it hits the scorecards, I think 29-28 Rosa. If it's a late finish, I think Rosa. If it's an early finish, Minner. So more paths for Rosa, so I'll take Rosa here, but I would be a little hesitant to lay this kind of chalk on a guy like Charles Rosa, Shaq.
Yeah, I feel basically the same way. But look, I don't like paying that type of line for a guy like Charles Rosa in general. But at the same time, I think he's not getting enough credit for how he looked his last fight. I actually thought, I was surprised that was a split decision. Am I tripping? Against Aguilar?
I think it might have been a split decision.
No, it was. I just thought it was a clear win for Rosa. I was surprised. I thought it was one of his better performances that he's had to stay on the feet for the most part for 15 minutes. I know Kevin Aguilar is slow, but just coming off of the Bryce Mitchell performance, I thought it was a good step in the right direction. He had been off for like a very, very long time before that. Only one fight in like 3-4 years. So I thought that was a very good step in the right direction. Look, we know Rosa ain't that good, and he hits soft, and I call him Baby Elias, Baby Elias Theodoro. He's similar style, flailing them arms out, flailing them kicks. But one thing I always like about those dudes, in certain matchups, they are guaranteed to outwork the other guy. I mean, Derek Minner, like you said, 21st round submission wins. I don't know how many guillotines he's got, a bunch of them. But, a lot of those guillotines came from a scene on the Nebraskan scene. The Nebraskan local scene, it ain't the hottest. So I'm not surprised he had 20-something submission wins out there. He's also fought some tough dudes on his resume as well, but he's lost to those dudes for the most part. And like you said, TJ Laramie was the next guy from TKO to slip up. So, I mean, TJ Laramie literally left his neck right there. Derek Minner looked at Krause and stuck his tongue out as he was like, wow, he literally gave it to me. Okay, perfect. So, yeah, look, the first 3 minutes of this fight is going to be a hold your breath moment. It's going to be like, Charles, please don't get caught. Please don't, watch your neck. But I'm promising, man, if Charles Rosa gets out of this first round guillotine or the jiu-jitsu storm that Minner has, I think it's almost a lock that he's going to outwork him in the next 2 rounds. I mean, one thing about Theodoro and Rosa and these guys is they work, and they work. They will try as hard as they possibly can to get that win. Even though it's not hard, a heart attack, he will give it his all. And I like that. He's a very hard worker. So I'm going with Charles Rosa to kind of just overwhelm him with kicks in the last 2 rounds.
Now we got to talk about the co-main event and the main event. Before we do, all our fans, do us a favor, give us a like and a subscribe. Thank you very much. Co-main event of the evening, we got Ketlen Vieira. She's 11-1, and Yana Kunitskaya is 13-5. Currently, they got Ketlen Vieira minus 270. The comeback on Yana Kunitskaya is plus 207. So, Shaq, I know we were historically very high on Ketlen Vieira in the past, cashed a max bet against I almost said against Kat Zingano, submitted Sarah McMahon in the second round. She's been doing some things. We've liked her for a long time. Nova Uniao, black belt in jiu-jitsu, and she's a judo black belt too. With Yana Kunitskaya, she's very big for the weight class. She's got, she's kind of strong. If she can kind of pin you up against that fence, she can have a lot of success there. Long range, her striking ain't too bad either. It's just she can give it, but when it comes time to taking it, and I understand Ketlin's the one that got knocked out in the first round not too long ago, but I don't know if that was
what's her name got knocked out too.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was an anomaly or what the case was, but I kind of don't expect that to happen here. And with Yana, my biggest concern is that she'll be doing well in these fights, and then if she hits the mat, I mean, even in like her Invicta fights, man, like that Raquel Paolui fight, like, do you know Raquel Paolui's record, Shaq? And all respect to the Hawaiian Warrior, but let me tell you this real quick. Raquel Paolui is like 6-7, Shaq. So did she change her name? I don't think her name's Raquel Paolui anymore. It says her name's Raquel Canuto. Maybe, who knows? Maybe she got divorced. Maybe someone can let me know in the comments. But when she fought the person formerly named Raquel Paolui, who's 6-7, by the way, I mean, like, dude, like, there was a lot of alarming shit there. And now we're talking about a black belt in jiu-jitsu and judo and Ketlen Vieira. I think it could be close standing, but I think the big difference is when Ketlen Vieira hits her with one of those trips, she's got some very beautiful trips, by the way. When she gets on top of her, I mean, she can control it if she wants. She can play it safe. But if she wants to pass the guard and show off her Andre Pedernera's black belt, she's more than capable of doing so as well. So I'm going with Ketlen Vieira to win this fight, bottom line, either a decision or submission.
Yeah, I think Ketlen Vieira is the better fighter all across the board in terms of the power. I just think the Arine fight, it was a case of Arine, look, eventually she was going to get rewarded for her hard work, and it was just the perfect spot. One side's off for 2.5 years. The other side has fought literally maybe like 4 or 5 times in that span. So, she was definitely a lot more comfortable. And I don't think it was a bad performance at all. I think it was a good round. Kevin was up slightly, and look, it happens to the best of them. You gotta take a L at some point. Look, Kunitskaya, only thing I like about her, I think she's a good pointer. I think she's a good scorer. She can add up the points very nicely, but I just don't think she's very dangerous. I think to beat Ketlen Vieira, you're gonna need to have something, and I just see Ketlen landing the harder shots, bullying her against that fence. And I think that last fight was a nice little tune-up fight for her to get her confidence back. And we can't forget my boy Pedernera's had COVID. He couldn't even make the trip. So she actually had to be down there by herself and just have somebody corner her from Brazil that was on the card. I forget who it was, but so I think that she's going to feel a lot more comfortable. And, my boy Andrei, when my boy Andrei pours that water in her pants and tells her that she needs to get right, that she will. And look at, what's her teammate's name that just beat McCann? She looked good. Procopio. Them Novu and Yao black belt, judo black belts, man, when they get on top, they're no slouch. But I think Ketlen's just a better fighter all across the board, and I just see her winning a decision. I think Kunitskaya will make it the distance, but what I don't like about Kunitskaya is her chin. I think that in some of these pocket exchanges, man, she closes her eyes. She doesn't like to get hit. Aspen Ladd ain't known for her stand-up, Daniel, and Aspen Ladd dropped her with a punch and knocked her out. And you can't forget about the Marion No fight where half her face was covered in blood as well. And I still thought she won that fight, but I'm going with Ketlen Vieira. I think she's going to show everyone why she was once a top contender.
Main event in the evening in the heavyweight division, we got Curtis Razor Blaydes. He's 14-2, and Derrick the Black Beast Lewis is 24-7. Currently, they got Curtis Blaydes -400. The comeback on Derrick Lewis is +300. So, Shaq, we got the man with the most takedowns in UFC heavyweight history at 58. And he also holds the record for most takedowns in a single fight in heavyweight history with 14 against Volkov, taking on the man with the most knockouts in heavyweight history in the Black Beast, Derrick Lewis, with 11. So we know exactly what both these guys want to do. Listen, I'm a huge fan of Derrick Lewis. I love the guy. I mean, how can you not? Most knockouts in heavyweight history. So exciting. And I love his sense of humor as well, talking about how he's a better wrestler than Blaydes. That shit had me dying laughing, man. He is one funny dude, and just all the shit he said throughout the years. With Blaydes, listen, he might be the most boring guy in the heavyweight division, but boy, can he win some fights, Shaq. And one thing I really respect about him, especially from a betting and DraftKings perspective, is that he's not going to not fight to his strengths, man. He's going to come out here and take Derrick Lewis down. It's just that Derrick Lewis, his get-up game has been getting better, and when he gets off on that Black Beast blitz, bodies tend to hit the floor, so Curtis has to be very careful. I think Curtis is going to get a lot of takedowns here. It's just if Lewis can get back up, that's where he's got to be careful. But ultimately, it pains me to say it, but not because I got something against Blaydes, just because I love Lewis so much. I got to go with Curtis Blaydes here, man. Via grinding this one out, whether it's a decision, whether it's a ground and pound TKO. Just stylistically, this is a horrendous matchup for Derrick Lewis with that 52% takedown defense. I know the get-up game is improving, and I also know this is a man in Derrick Lewis who beat Ngannou. Boring fight, but beat Ngannou. Has beat a lot of people. Beat Alexander Volkov by knockout. So, legend, love the guy, but I got to go with Curtis Blaydes here to grind this one out, Shaq.
Yeah, it's one of these cases where I think most people would be cheering for Derrick, but I think we know how this is going to turn out. Curtis ain't going to give him that chance. He's just going to come out here and dive on the legs real quick, and I don't blame the guy. Get 2 checks, go home with a good chin. You don't want to go home with your face covered in blood and eyes swelled up. And look, Derrick Lewis has that habit of getting guys to use all their energy on top of him, and this is a 5-round fight, so there is going to be moments where Derrick gets off on that patented Black Beast blitz. It's just Curtis Blaydes can chain those takedowns. Even when he got tired against Alexander, he still was able to muster up the energy for another takedown, and he was dead tired in that fight. So I see more of the same thing. I know Derrick Lewis claims to be the best blue belt in all of Texas. He's actually training with Lauren Murphy's husband, who's actually like a serious jiu-jitsu guy. So they have definitely gotten his game up. Even if he loses this fight, man, he can always come back and still be a part of the top 10 in this division, maybe even higher than that. So, yeah, Curtis Blaydes will probably get the decision win or maybe even a late submission, late ground and pound stoppage. But I see Curtis Blaydes definitely winning this fight.
So normally we talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch, but we actually got to get out of here. So thank you very much to all our fans for checking this out. We truly appreciate y'all waking up bright and early with us. Means a lot. Please give us a like and a subscribe. It truly means a lot. You can follow Shaq at MMA Genius 05. You can follow me at Best Fight Picks. You can get our plays at bestfightpicks.com. Subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, all the places where we are available. Hit up our sponsor, Manscaped, at manscaped.com. Use that promo code BATTLE20 for 20% off and free shipping. Again, Best Fight Picks. Subscribe to Half the Battle. Oh, yeah, and also I've been doing some written work for Line Movement, so make sure you check them out too. Thank you very much to all our fans. We truly appreciate it. We'll be back next week for the next card. So until the next time, let's cash these bets.